Testing, mic 3, mic 3. We're not getting it, but I'm going to slide it over anyways, just to be sure. Just to be safe. Yeah, we weren't getting it right away, but who knows? As soon as we start, we'll start getting it again, so. Mic 4, no cut. It's there a little bit. Mic 4, test 1, 2, test. Testing, mic 4. Okay. Mic 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic 5. Test 1, 2, testing, mic 5, test. Yeah. I'm just doing it to every one of them now. Mic 6, just cut it. Mic 6. Test 1, 2. Air compressor. Test 1, 2. Hello. Good. Mic 7. Just cut it. Mic 7. Cut the low. 1, 2. Testing. Mic 7. Hello. Sounds like there might still be a little bit. Is it? Okay. Sounds good? Test? Okay. Mic 8. Testing mic 8. Microphone 8. Playing with a little bit, making a little extra noise. Just cut it out. Testing, mic 8. Mic 8, testing, cut it a little bit more. Test. Test 1, 2, test louder. And mic 9, testing mic 9, that sounds quiet. Testing mic 9, is that quiet? Microphone 9, I wonder why that's so quiet. Mic 9, is that better? Cut the lows, mic 9. Test 1, 2, still kind of quiet? Yeah. Is that quiet over with YouTube, Ben? Microphone 9, testing mic 9, looking around, mic 9, test 1, 2, 1, 2. That one. Oh, yeah. So the way that we're going to have to do it, because I couldn't get a laptop to connect, so this is the only big screen, I can connect on my phone, and I can do the broadcast on my phone maybe, and then you can still carry around this iPad, because we'll need quicker reactions out here than we will on the broadcast, because we won't get feedback Okay, so this one's going to be tough for, I guess, everyone else. Probably most everyone else is going to be a little closer to the microphone. Test 1, 2, mic, not, mic 10. Mic 10. Mic 10. Oops. Mic 10. I don't have any presets on this. Let's throw one on there. Test mic 10. Testing. Test, 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 test. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good. Sounds good.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Gonna be speaking at a normal speaking volume, grabbing onto the podium for dear life, as normally all people do. Alrighty. Testing, testing. Actually, I lost everything. Did we turn off the JBL speakers? Feels like we're good. I can be quiet now? Oh, we're doing good. Okay. get your breath back.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to start the Burleigh County Planning and Zoning meeting, and the first item on the agenda is the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The first item on the agenda with regard to consent is the Plains Ridge Subdivision preliminary plat. We'll call on Marla to bring us up to speed there.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Plainsbridge Subdivision preliminary plat. The applicant is Seth Samness. Surveyor is Houston Engineering. The applicant is seeking preliminary plat approval for a 4-lot subdivision. They would like to have a public hearing. The location is 11201 Northeast 41st Street, legally described as Burnt Creek Township. Section 24, southwest 1/4, beginning at the common quarter to sections 23 and 24 and 25 and 26. Thence 600, south 800 or 8915 east 702.8 feet, north 1 degree 10 feet, or 867.7 feet, south 89 degrees 42 feet west for 727.5 feet, then south 854.6 feet to the point of the beginning. The existing zoning right now is agricultural. The findings are the applicant is requesting the 4-lot subdivision. It will be on 14 acres, more or less. Each lot will contain 3 acres, more or less. The applicant applied and received a paving waiver from the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners on February 3rd, 2020. A storm water management will be required. The preliminary plat has been reviewed by all reviewing entities. Corrections are being made. The existing zoning is agricultural. Because of the size of the lots, zoning must be changed to R1, rural single-family residential, before final approval by the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners. And a variance should be requested for the accessory building located between lots 1 and 2. This request conforms to Article 33 subdivision regulations of the Burleigh County ordinances. Staff is recommending to approve the preliminary plat and the approval for the public hearing. The conditions have been met. They have applied for a zoning change from A, agricultural, to R1, single-family residential. I received that on Monday. The variance for the building, they agreed to tear down the building, and the building that's on the property line, they are not going to tear it down, but they cannot do any improvements on it. And they will submit a stormwater management plan. So I recommend approval of the preliminary plat and approval of the preliminary plat, or the plat and the zoning change for a public hearing at the next meeting.
Questions for Marla? Any questions?
Chairman Efforts. I have, I guess, a number of concerns about this development, and I'm wondering if anybody actually went out and looked at the property, if county commissioners went out and looked at the property, if they looked at the roads prior to it getting to this point.
Nobody can hear me though.
It's echo.
Okay, all right. I guess I have a number of concerns about this development in general, and I would move to see it, I don't know how it works, but move to see it tabled for now until people can get out to look at this property and understand the concerns. Game and Fish was out there. There's concerns with the channel that flows through there. There's concerns that the highway department has mentioned with 41st Street and how they're going to keep it open. So I'm kind of confused how it comes in front of planning and zoning with a recommendation for approval instead of a recommendation for consideration on items like this. It's a 14-acre parcel, and it's owned by, I believe, a realtor and her husband, and a 14-acre parcel seeking to divide it into 4 small lots and add four accesses to about a quarter mile. So there's just a lot of concerns about this development that should have been, I think, addressed prior to getting to this point.
This is, today they're just asking, they haven't submitted the final plat, they're just asking to go to a public hearing.
I thought it said they're looking
It's,
for a plat approval.
Approval of the preliminary plat, and they are seeking approval of the preliminary plat and then approval to go to a public hearing. It would be the next week or next month, public hearing on it, and at that time they'll have the final plat submitted. But it's not approving the plat completely, it's approving them to go ahead. It's on the consent agenda. So it's approval today would just say we approve of the preliminary plat, go on to the final, and we approve of the public hearing.
So at what point do the concerns get addressed with Game and Fish, with the excessive accesses to 1/8 of a mile? At what point does that all get addressed at the public hearing?
The access points have already been addressed through engineering, and engineering will look at that. If I'm not mistaken, they're having dual access points where they share. And we send out the preliminary plat to the entities around the state, or around Burleigh County. I have a list that we send to, and they address their concern. Rural Fire has answered, the Sheriff's Department has answered, excuse me, Water has answered. Those are the entities. And we get the concern during the public hearing.
So Game and Fish is not normally notified if
No.
there's a waterway?
Can you
Okay.
understand her?
And these lots are big enough to where they will have their own septic, R1s.
Any further discussion with regard to the request for the preliminary approval and move to the public hearing?
I would move to approve staff recommendation.
Did I hear you correctly, that you moved to approve the staff recommendation? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the staff's recommendation to approve the preliminary plat and schedule a public hearing for the next meeting. Any further discussions?
Yeah, why?
That, and that is your recommendation? That's part of your recommendation, is that true? Yes. So the motion is to approve the staff's recommendation, which includes the zoning change. Discussion? Commissioner Bittner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that recommendation includes all three of those criteria there. Yeah.
Did you hear it?
I think most of us heard it, but I think anybody listening in may not have been able to hear, so you
Okay.
might reiterate.
Repeat it? Okay, they, one of the conditions we had set up was that they apply for a zoning change because the lots were too small to stay ag. So they submitted the application for the zoning change on Monday. So I am requesting the commission approve that so that these go through the system together. We recommended apply for a variance for a building that would have been out of zoning, would have been a zoning violation, and they are going to tear that building down to eliminate the zoning violation. And I talked with Casey with Burleigh County Engineering, and they are working on the stormwater management plan. So everything is right in step.
Further discussion?
Chairman, Commissioners, so
Commissioner
Marla will
Marquardt.
have all that information when it comes to a public hearing then, I'm assuming, right? Thank you.
Yes, it will all be. I sent out today the change and the findings, the staff report, today by email with the letters.
Yes, Commissioner Woodcox.
Marla, that letter we got from the North Dakota Game and Fish, that's pretty much a standardized letter with anything along the right-of-way. Will that be considered when they do the stormwater plan?
Casey can answer that one.
Typically, when they're going through the stormwater management plan, right now they're looking at a drainage easement on that, through the middle of the lot in that drainway. And at preliminary, they're contacting everyone and we're seeing what they have to do. They have to delineate any wetlands that are there, and then if there's any impacts, how do you manage that and how do you mitigate it and be able to preserve those portions.
So do you have any recommendation on these? Should these be built on these lots or do you not?
I haven't seen the stormwater management plan yet. by ordinance, it's not required at preliminary plat, but they
Okay.
have to have it before we can go to final plat. And
Okay.
they're working on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion? Any more questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll vote.
The motion is to approve the preliminary plat and zoning change and a public hearing. And a yes vote means you approve, a no vote means you are against it. Commissioner Agnew?
Yes.
Commissioner Bachman?
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner?
Yes.
Commissioner Marquardt?
Yes.
Commissioner Munn?
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Streifel?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcock?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes. Motion passed. The continued items that are on the agenda are the next item of business is the special use permit for the airsoft range, Tyler Kinseth. And this is a continuation of our April 8th meeting that was tabled. And Marla, go ahead.
Okay. The applicant was Taylor Kinseth for Black Rhino, and the applicant is seeking a special use permit to set up and operate an airsoft range. The location is Riverview Township, Section 13, north 1/2 southwest, 1/4 beginning at the northeast corner south 1,109 feet, west 55.2 feet, southwest 2,015.39 feet, northwest 705 feet, northwest 196.81 feet, northeast 40.23 feet, north 414.37 feet, east 2,596.79 feet, including a property legally described as Riverview Township, Section 14, southeast quarter. The existing zoning is agricultural. The history is on the April 8th, 2020 public hearing on the issuance of the special use permit was closed, and the decision was tabled to allow the planning and zoning commissioners to view the location and the traffic in the area of the request. Staff findings were the parcels are zoned A, agricultural. The applicant has received permission from the property owner to use the land for the airsoft field. There will be no permanent structures constructed on the property. Adequate sanitary facilities shall be made available for public use. This application does conform with Article 8 special uses as per Burleigh County zoning ordinances. This request conforms to the permitted uses in an A agricultural zone property per Article 11A agricultural district regulations for the Burleigh County zoning ordinances. The applicants currently have a special use permit issued in 2017 for a different location. There have been no complaints regarding this use and/or participation in the airsoft range. Staff recommends an approval be sent to the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners.
Any questions? Any questions for Marla? Any discussion with regard to the request for the special use permit? Commissioner Bittner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't able to attend that meeting, and I understand that there was a pretty lengthy discussion and that this is not a public, or not a continuation of the public hearing. This is just moving the decision to this meeting,
Yes,
correct?
it's the motion to approve the special use permit was tabled.
Right.
And so the public hearing was closed.
Okay, that's what I thought. I guess, did any commissioners in the meantime get any input from citizens asking that it be approved? Because all I've seen in any of this was the neighbors were all, or the people that I saw that commented were all to deny the special use permit. Is that consistent with?
Chairman Bittner, that's the way that it was at the meeting, yes, that you did not attend. Most of it was, just like the letters that we received, most of it was against moving forward with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Marquardt.
Since it's been a little while since we discussed that, one of the things that we had heard in a lot of the letters that we received was that they're not against a business that's out there, but a lot of it was just the traffic issues that they were concerned about. Some of it was as far as how to get to their soft range, what roads would they take. One of the other things that I had brought up was they already have an existing place already that's working real well. So that was one of the reasons why I wasn't necessarily in favor of it then to approve this. I understand that they do want to make it a little bit larger, maybe a little bit different terrain, kind of get a different idea from the players as far as a little bit different scenery, which by all rights is within their right. They do have the landowner's permission, but I think the biggest thing that I had heard from that meeting was a lot of the local landowners in the area and homeowners in the area, as far as just the amount of increased traffic and where that traffic would go is a lot of the information that I had received at that time, and currently, I should say.
Okay.
Mr. Bittner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that has come to my attention because of a different issue someplace else is that one of the things that we should be kind of focusing on here at the Planning Commission is basically findings of facts. And that, I think, is consistent with what you were just talking about, because that's the testimony that was presented, and that's the reasons that you're making the decisions the way we are. So if we can kind of, hopefully working with staff, that we can be, when we're saying those things that seem, as I'm looking down the table, it seemed like everybody was in agreement with what you were saying, and that gets into that finding of fact category. So I think into the future, the more that we look at specific things as the findings of fact that either, support or not a request, the better off we are as a board. And so, Marla, if you would make note of the things that Commissioner Marquardt spoke about, because I'm sure that's what was talked about at the meeting. So.
By all means, if somebody heard something different, let me know.
That's consistent with what I've been hearing from everybody. So.
The chair would entertain a motion to either approve or deny the request for special use permit.
What was
The request was for the special use permit, and so we either need to approve or deny that.
Was the tabled motion to approve or deny? Or
I don't have a copy of the meeting. What was the motion?
I can read it.
Or was it?
Yeah. The motion was to table the decision until the next scheduled meeting.
Okay.
There wasn't, okay.
So it was not to approve or to deny.
Right.
And approval from the Planning Commission, we'll just approve it to go on to the County Commission for final approval.
For a motion, right?
Chairman?
Yes.
Taylor Kinseth, and they're here if you would like to ask them some questions. They have some,
Do you have anything
Information.
new that you can present that was not
the-
presented
the-
at a previous meeting?
The public hearing is closed.
Public hearing is closed.
Right.
But if the owner has any new factual information
We'd
to
have
present.
to reopen the public hearing.
Is that permissible? If they have.
Yeah, if there's a motion made and seconded and voted on to open the public hearing, but that's the whole point, because you draw the line someplace. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just that you draw a line on public hearing, the public hearing is closed, and unless you reopen it, then you don't take new information.
I would move to deny the special use permit.
It's been moved to deny the application for the special use permit. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to deny the special use permit. Any further discussion?
I guess the reason that I would move to deny that is that I haven't heard anything any different. The only things that have been presented to me before the previous meeting and before this meeting have been were not in support of it. So that's the reason that I would bring this up to deny.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Marla, can you call for roll vote?
the motion is to deny the special use permit. A yes vote means you approve of denying it. A no vote means you're against the motion. Commissioner Woodcock?
Marla, Chairman, if I may just, Marla, can you speak into the microphone a little bit more so we
Okay.
can hear you? Thank you.
All right, the motion is to deny the special use permit. A yes vote means you agree with the denial. A no vote means you don't agree with the motion. Commissioner Woodcox?
Pardon me? You call,
I'm doing a
calling
roll.
for a vote?
Yep.
I have trouble understanding you. Yes,
It's hard to hear in here.
both.
Commissioner Streifel? For the vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick?
No.
Commissioner Mund?
No.
Commissioner Marquardt?
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner?
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken,
No.
Commissioner Agnew,
Yes.
Chairman,
No.
4 no, 5 yes, motion passed. Chairman, with the denial of the special use, I need a finding of facts as to why the motion was denied.
As indicated, I think the facts were the concern about the traffic was one of the largest concerns. Is that what you'd mentioned, Commissioner Marquardt?
That was one of the facts. Another one is safety as far as for fire department being out there. And the other one would be fire and road conditions.
Anything else that we want to enter into the minutes with regard to findings of fact? Commissioner Bittner?
Thank you. Again, I wasn't at the meeting, but it looked to me like people were also making comments about noise in the neighborhood, being right near other people's houses, and that there was also a concern I think I saw one that one of the concerns was the additional dust and the impact on the people and the animals in the area. I think that would be a fact.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes that item on the agenda, and now we're ready to move into the public hearings. First is the variance request for oversized accessory building on a lot without a primary dwelling at 8822 Welly Loop, described as the Welly Subdivision, Block 1, Lot 13. Marla, can you bring us up to speed with that?
Okay, this is a variance request submitted by Cody and Ashley Wagner. The applicants are requesting a variance to build a 2,400 square foot accessory building on an R1 rural single-family residential lot without a primary dwelling. The location is 8822 Welly Loop, legally described as Welly Subdivision, Block 1, Lot 13. The existing zoning is R1 rural single-family residential. Notifications were sent to the Bismarck Tribune May 22nd and 29th. It was published to the Burleigh County website June 1st, and surrounding property owners were notified May 29th. Findings. The Burleigh County Zoning Ordinance, Article 4, Incidental Uses, Section 1, Accessory Uses, Item J. Construction of a garage or storage building in an R1 or A agricultural district is allowed prior to construction of a principal dwelling, provided the following conditions. A, 60% of all landowners within a quarter mile sign a petition waiving objections to the proposed building, and it's limited to one structure of no more than 1,200 square feet for lots less than 10 acres and 2,400 square feet for lots over 34 acres. And the applicant is asking for a variance to build a 24 square foot.
Marla, could you say those numbers again? They were a little hard for us to understand.
I just don't want to yell out here. The numbers on the size,
Yes.
is this better? Okay. It's limited to one structure of no more than 1,200 square feet for lots less than 10 acres and 2,400 square feet for lots over 34 acres. Their lot contains 5.7 acres, and the applicants would like a 24 square foot, which even with a house would be allowable with the percentage, 4% lot coverage. The applicant would like to have their horses and store equipment materials while building their primary residence. The proposed building size is under the allowable size with a primary residence for this lot. The applicant received a list of the surrounding property owners from Burleigh County Building and Planning Department per a records request. There were 26 property owners. The applicant sent petitions to the surrounding property owners and received over 60% of the surrounding property owners' approval. We received 19 letters, 19 petition pages. The variance request fulfills the requirements of Article 28 variances, Burleigh County zoning ordinances. The applicants have fulfilled the requirements of Article 6, incidental uses of the Burleigh County ordinance. Granting of this variance is allowed under Article 28 variances, Burleigh County zoning ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the application and approval to be sent to the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners for final approval.
Any questions for Marla? It's my understanding they want to put a 60 by 40 building, 2,400 square feet, is that correct?
Yes,
On a 5.7 acre lot?
yes.
Okay.
I did bring pictures of the building if you'd like to see it, that they're planning on putting up. Does that include the overhangs? She just said it was less than 2,400 square feet.
Say that again, I didn't hear you.
It's, she said that it's less than 2,400 square feet. It's 1,840.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do they have any idea when they're going to build their house?
Not this summer,
Not this summer?
not this summer. She's here if you'd like to talk to
Yeah,
her.
please, please, give her a chance.
Yeah. We'll open the public hearing at this time. Go ahead.
You have a question about when we're building the home? Our plan is to build the home next spring. We were originally planning to build the home this spring and decided to hold off for 1 year, but we would like to start the process of building the accessory structure to allow us to store some of the equipment that we would like to use to build the house, as well as to create a safe space for horses. And part of the 1,840 square feet is a 320 square foot open lane that would provide shade for the horses, so it's not enclosed. I don't know if you received the picture. We provided a picture to Marla and to all the homeowners in the area of what we're proposing. So the enclosed square footage would be 1,520 for storage.
Sure. Questions? Commissioner Bittner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you say the square footage was going to be 15, 20?
So what we've been told is that even if it's just a roof, like, I don't know if you can see the screen, it's just a shade structure. One of the leans on the building is completely open, but that's included in the square footage apparently of the structure, even though it's not enclosed. So including that lean is 1,840. Not including the open lean is 1,520, I think. Yeah, so the building itself without the liens is 1,200 square feet. But we are requesting to add an 8 by 40, a little 8 foot wide by the length of the building. So the building itself, the main structure is 30 by 40, 1,200 square feet.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Any other question?
Chairman Efforts?
Yes. Commissioner Streifel?
Mister? Can you tell me on the property, I did drive out there and look at it, can you tell me on the property will the building be placed up on the hill or down in the low spot?
Down low, the home, the dwelling will be placed on the hill. We have it designed with a walkout basement, so it won't be down in the low spot. It'll be above that. It's drawn on we drew it on the property plot map as well. So there's a low spot, but it would be to the west of that, up higher.
And it's the area between the road and then there's a row of trees.
Yeah,
in the
there's
back.
4 rows of trees in the back. That whole, yeah, the lot goes to behind that last row of trees.
Okay, thank you.
So,
None of us can see that. It would have to be, the screen would have to be angled for us to see anything that's on that screen. That's right. There you go. Okay.
Just a quick question. I see you've got 73% of the people in the surrounding area are on board with this. What were the issues with the people that are not on board with this, or why would they not want it?
so I don't know that it's that they didn't want it. We were able to just send letters with the whole pandemic crisis. We did not go door to door. We didn't think that was safe. So we put together a letter, that picture, and the first page of the petition, and put a self-addressed stamped envelope in with that. And what we received back were all approvals. The people who did not respond, we don't know if they didn't want to or they just neglected to send it back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the landowner? Any other parties interested in testifying at the hearing with regard to this variance request? Hearing none, I guess we will close the public hearing with regard to item number 5. And I will entertain a recommendation from the board.
Move to approve?
Mr. Chairman? Okay. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the variance request. Any discussion? Commissioner Bittner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think it'd be prudent to go ahead and include the square footage discussion that the applicant has asked for. You know, instead of granting like a 2,400 or, you know, she mentioned the specific square footage of the building plus the square footage of the overhang. And from a construction standpoint, we don't consider that overhang area to be square footage of the structure because it's less than 3 sides, you know. There's only one side essentially. Now if they want to take, it needs to be limited so that they're not going to take and just enclose that and create some additional structure that the neighbors might not be aware of. And so it should be, the minutes should reflect the square footage of the structure itself plus the square footage of the overhang. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
So I would move to approve with the, Marla, I believe it was 1,520 square feet enclosed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just need the
yeah, 'cause
enclosed square footage on that, so
yeah.
that would be my motion then,
Yeah.
as approved by staff.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Chair
Yes,
Everett,
Commissioner Stryker.
are we under the understanding then that there's not going to be a dwelling built this summer and we don't have an idea of when will be built? Is that how everybody sees this, or was there, no? Is there a build date?
A build date for what, the house? Next spring is the plan.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a roll vote.
The motion is to approve the variance and recommend approval to the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners. A yes vote means you agree with the motion. A no vote means you don't. Commissioner Bakken,
Yes.
Commissioner Agnew,
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner,
Yes.
Commissioner Mund, Commissioner Mund,
No.
Commissioner Marquardt,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
No.
Commissioner Streufel,
Yes.
yes. Commissioner Woodcox,
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no.
Motion carried to be recommended to the Board of Commissioners. Now we'll have Marla address us with regard to the zoning change, item number 6 in the public hearing.
This is Forest Eklund Estates, a zoning change. The applicant is Bradley Miller, representing the Forest Eklund Estate. The location is Burnt Creek Township, Auditor's Lots A, B, C, and D of the southeast 1/4 of Section 22, Township 140 North, Range 80 West. The existing zoning is agricultural. The applicant is seeking a recommendation for approval to the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners for a zoning change from agricultural to R2 rural single-family residential. Notifications were sent to the Bismarck Tribune, May 22nd and 29th, Burleigh County website, June 1st, and the surrounding property owners, May 29th. This zoning change request is for 4 lots with a total acreage of 149 acres, more or less. Lot A equals 6.7 acres, Lot B equals 49 acres, Lot C 49 acres, Lot D 45. The zoning change request meets the intent and purposes of Article 4 zoning districts and boundaries, Burleigh County zoning ordinances. The zoning change request meets the intent and purposes of Article 29 amendments to the Burleigh County zoning ordinance. There is no immediate plans to develop these lots at this time. The zoning change has been requested by the Forest Eklund Estates in order to sell the lots for development at a future date. There are no plans to develop this area at this time. Based on the above findings, staff recommends approval of the request and forwarding to the Board of Burleigh County Commissioners with a due pass recommendation.
Questions for Marla? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the public hearing and open it up. Anyone that's interested in commenting on the zoning change of the Forest Eklund property? Yes, state your name, please.
My name is Brad Miller. I'm one of the 9 owners of the property, and we're requesting a zoning change to R2, zoning change only, for future purposes years down the road. If someone purchases our land, they can develop it. We've looked in the area at developments. We've looked at the ranch development, which is 2+ miles north of our property. Our property borders the Bismarck ETA, and the ranch is 2+ miles north of us. We really like the looks of that development. As a family, we're trying to be able to say what is going to be developed on our land. And something like that, we're kind of all in agreement that would be nice. K&L Homes Heritage Ridge borders our land to the north. They've also been granted R2 zoning. So as a family, we've decided that we go for the R2 zoning. It sets our property up to what we think our parents would want us to do with the land. And in the future, if someone buys it, we don't know if or when, but the vandalism that went on our property over the last, everybody knows we had a purchase agreement at one time with Pioneer Land Company. In February, his plat was denied. That purchase agreement died on that day. The property has been listed for sale. Our property has been vandalized. My tractor has been vandalized, $2,000 setting in the property. Whoever vandalized this property might have thought they were hurting Art Goldhammer or Pioneer Land Company. They were mistaken. They vandalized me personally. That was my tractor sitting in that shop that was vandalized. Nails were spread from 110th Avenue in our property up to the shop. Burleigh County Sheriff's Department come out and investigated. They said it looked to be about 2 days old, and that was after the March meeting. And still under investigation. All we're asking for R2 zoning, no more and no less. It was granted to the ranch development, and it was granted to K&L Homes. And that's all we're asking as a family. We were raised to treat everybody with respect, the way you want to be treated. And I think I've been fair with everyone, and that's all I ask, to be treated fairly back. If you have any questions, I'd sure answer them.
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner McCoy.
Chairman and Commissioners, Mr. Miller, and I know I had asked you the same question last meeting. So why did you decide R2, other than what you just stated as far as other developments in the area have been granted that? I think I had asked you versus an R1.
Right,
You know,
correct.
I know some of the discussion was prior to if we just leave it agricultural. You as a family don't necessarily have a whole lot of say in what can come in there, and there's a lot of different options for people to bring in a lot of different kinds of things to there that might not be as well received in the neighborhood versus an R1 or an R2. So I guess just again, if you can kind of elaborate on that as far as why R2 versus the R1, or why not just leave it in ag?
The R2, we look at the development, it's restricted what you can develop on it. And we have been approached as a family to sell part of it for a feedlot, asphalt, concrete recycling plant. I have talked to some of the neighbors there and asked their opinion. The closest neighbors, Eric and Melody Lear, says, please do not do that to us. You're going to devalue our property. If you put in a housing development, whether some of the residents think it devalues their property, it only raises our property values. And so that's why I'm trying to get away. We have our realtor, and personally, I'm getting calls on my cell phone number from other realtors, and I'm asking, who is giving out my cell number to you people? Well, we have a client that wants 12 to 13 acres in the middle of this, and I said, our property is for sale as a whole right now. You know, we are going as a family for R2 zoning for the simple reason is we want to determine what is developed on their land, which I believe everyone else, if they own the property, they would want to have the right to say, this is what's developed on our land. I want to be able to someday meet up with my parents again and say, you know, you did it right. You didn't put a smelly feedlot out there. Whether the people did what they did to you, at least you stuck to your guns and says, a housing development. When my dad bought that land, he was going to purchase some other land. And he was sell some land. And I told him I want to buy that land. For what? For deer hunting. And my dad told me, no, we're going to purchase this quarter land here. And this is why, he said. He said, when I'm dead and gone, and you kids, all 9 of you kids, you're going to inherit this land. And when you start building houses on this land, and you start selling this for $28,000 an acre. I don't believe there's a deer alive in this country worth $28,000 an acre. Well, I would sure like to get $28,000 an acre for that land today. But after what went on in the year and a half, the way I felt that we were treated, and the guy that had a purchase agreement, he did everything that was asked of him by the Burleigh County staff. And I apologize, I wasn't at the February meeting. I was in Garrison at my cousin's prayer service. He had passed away. I got home and I watched the replay of that meeting. And I tell you, I was sick to my stomach, the way it was handled. The stuff that people stood up and said, I mean, if I have opinion of someone, I would never get up and make statements like were made at that meeting. And it's pretty hard for me I have siblings that live out of the state all over, but they still were born and raised as North Dakotans, you know. I know our world is diversified today with all the protesting and stuff that goes on. But I'm only asking as his family, and I've talked to the residents out there, you're more than welcome to buy this land also. It is on the market. And do with what you want to do with it. This is what our wishes is, to say what goes on our development. So someone can't come in and put a feedlot out there, which they want to do, or asphalt and a concrete crushing facility. If I'm just worried about sticking money in their pocket, we'd probably say go for it and let them live with it. But I don't believe our parents wanted us to do that. And at the meeting, Commissioner Bittner, in the February meeting, when I watched it back, he had made the comment, why is the developer coming for a plat approval? Usually the homeowner, the landowner comes for that. That's why I'm here on behalf of my siblings that are in here also, asking for the R2 zoning, because that was Commissioner Bittner's request. No more, no less. I just want to be treated fair. And the way we have been treated through this process, we have had expenses for a year and a half. We're all in our 60s and 70s. It's time that probably some of us really wouldn't want to sell the land, but when there's 9 children that own it, it has to be sold. And some of you, maybe some of you not, have ever been in a situation like that. This is the first time I've ever been in this situation. But it comes to the point, my parents are not coming back, and we're never going to inherit any more land. So my question to you and everyone in the audience is, if you were standing up here in my shoes today, what would you want? That's all I ask for. And with the R2 zoning, we can determine what's developed on our land. If and when, who knows when. We have so many calls from the local residents to realtors wanting to know, hey, now that the family's land is tainted, what is their lowball asking price? And I told my real estate agent, he tells me who they are. I says, interesting. You know, I don't know that they have enough money to buy this land, because my 1/9 of that land, I would never sell to them people. I had a local farmer that called me a few days after the February meeting, gloating about, we sure got that housing development stopped, but hey, could I farm your land? I said, Wayne, I don't think so. It's already rented out to the previous renters. And he goes on to tell me about how big of crooks they are and how the guys get in there last year and farm it. They're the biggest crooks. And you know, my dad raised us kids to treat people the way you want to be treated. And a crook thinks like a crook, and a thief thinks like a thief. So what did that tell me? This guy wants to rent our land for $10 an acre? Are you being realistic? I mean, I'm not a farmer. I retired out of a coal mine, 34 years, I'm 65. And it's time I enjoy my life, like I would expect everyone else to. And that's all I'm asking for as a family, is R2 zoning. Then, if someone comes forward in the future, a year, 2, 5 years from now, it's R2 zoning, they come before you guys for plat. We all learned our lesson when we signed our last purchase agreement with plat approval, thinking that, if I remember, a year ago, February 19th, this property was right in front of the commission, and it was approved for R2 zoning with condition of boring under the tracks for a sewer system. CP Rail in Canada owns the rail. The MBW Railroad runs the track. That's why I'm asking for R2 zoning. Under that condition, it was already approved under conditions, and that the ranch and K&L Homes Heritage Ridge has R2. And I don't think anybody could honestly stand up here and say, if I was sitting on that board tonight, I don't know that I could honestly say, you do not deserve it because we already granted it to the ranch and to K&L. And if we were looking at some development that was junky or whatever, that's one thing. But I really believe you drive up and you look at that ranch development, it's a nice development. I could honestly say, That would be a nice place to live. I'd like to come back someday with my grandkids and say, your great-grandfather owned this land. Look what it is today. Or do you want a salvage yard out here? Do you want a feedlot out here? That's all I'm asking for. So I guess if anybody has any questions, I'd sure answer them.
Any other questions for Brian?
Chair Efforts?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Streifel?
I have just 3 questions. Mr. Miller, you know myself and your father were very good friends. Do you plan to live in the area?
I have a home in Bismarck, and I have a home in Pig City, North Dakota. I plan on moving up there and retiring someday. That is my plan.
Do you happen to know how many acres are in Heritage Reserve and how many acres are in the ranch for those developments? Are you aware of those acreages?
No, I'm not aware of the total acreages in those areas. What are you referencing to as the acreage that they have versus acreage that we have? I guess that's...
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned about the comparisons because there's a difference in acreage of land, first of all, but I know that just for example, the acreage for the ranch is the amount that they set aside for green space and for the septic system is equal to your whole amount of land. So it's kind of hard to compare the two. I'm not sure how many acres Heritage Reserve is. I'm not positive on that, so I was just wondering.
I guess I'm not following you on the total acreage that they have in green space. I'm saying if there's so many acres and there's 1 home per acre, whatever, if it's 1,000 acres of land, it's 150 acres of land. If it's still R2 zone and it's still so many homes per acre, but I guess I don't understand where you're coming from, I guess is my question.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Public hearing is open, so anyone else like to comment with regard to the zoning change request?
My name is Adrian Dvorak. I live in Northwood Estates. Which is just
say your
down the
name
road.
again, please.
Adrian Dvorak, which is just down the road from where this development would take place. If you look at the brochure that we got here from you guys, it shows that these lots would be half acre. He said he wants to develop it so that he could have whatever the person wants to put in there. Well, according to this, it says half acre lots, right? Second of all, his dad, when he used to live in our development, when I first moved in there, he left that development. He's making a story about his dad wanted to develop this land. It's not true. Maybe later on at the end, but as long as I knew him, he wanted to be out there in the countryside with his horses, doing his stuff. This is a development plan that Brad came up with. Okay, now according to this, you know, you guys have this. If this was developed the way it's talking, they were talking about hooking this sewer system up with the development to the north. That sewer system is something that they have several of them out there now. Burleigh Rural Water is taking care of a couple of them for you guys, right? The system that they got up there in the ranch, if I'm correct, because I called him, Larry. Why is Burleigh Rural Water getting into these septic systems? I don't understand.
Are you asking me why is Burleigh Water getting into the septic?
No, not Burleigh Water, Southwest Water. It's called now. I always call it Burleigh Water.
I don't know that they are. That's new to me.
Commissioner Bittner might be able to shed some light on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of us, myself included, worked with the rural water system to accept the maintenance on those on that particular system to make sure that it would get maintained. You know, rather than rather than having a homeowners association or a group of people that we don't know anything about, this, at the time, my thoughts were this was more like a utility that you would find in town, so that the maintenance of that system was guaranteed to the citizens that were buying into the system. Now, this other one now is a completely different system. What's being proposed for, what was being proposed for Stonegate, and I don't know what Mr. Miller's intentions are for the septic systems. But as a commissioner, I think that it was purposely vague and left out of the conversations for the other one right next door to this. And so I'm not aware of a permit being issued for this new kind of system.
It's not issued because it's still at...
And so I have a problem with that one as much as I would have a problem with this one, because my goal as a commissioner was to see to it that this septic system was maintained into the future, so that eventually the city grows out there. This thing is built like city utilities are. So the city comes in and it's kind of a seamless transition from county to city. It seemed like a win-win at the time, and nothing has changed my mind on that first type of system. I just don't have enough information on this new one to feel comfortable. Does that answer your...
The new system I called North Dakota Health, and they said that this new system is under evaluation. You guys approved something for it, but it is not, the final approval is going to come back to you guys. It's not done yet. It has to come back for your approval for the septic system or that sewer system. Second of all, Rural Water said they will not run that system because it is being flushed out in the environment. It's not being held within a pond or underground like a regular sewer system like the ranch has.
Right.
So they said they will not run this one. They will not run anything that has, I asked if there's a violation, who pays for it?
It's a good point.
The permit owner pays for it, but what happens if the permit guy defaults or changes his business or what? What are you guys going to do? Now this development here, it's along 26th Street. If you look down to the south, we've had all kinds of problems with water in these developments down there. Is that correct? Along 71st there, farther down, all along 26th Street, you got all these water problems. We had to rebuild the roads in that one development here last year. Is that correct? So if you guys let this development happen, you're going to have watershed coming off of this property, down the road, and all flooding all these people out down there. Now, 2 years ago, 2/3 of this property was flooded out. Why do we want to develop? Why do we always want developments on places that are flooded out in the spring? Why don't we put them on higher property? This is not the right stuff. Guys, if we do anything, it should be keep it where it's out of the water. I mean, along rivers and stuff like that, I don't think that's right either. But this here, like I said, it's by the railroad. Half of it floods out. 2/3 of it floods it out. I mean, it's not the right thing. Traffic. What are you guys going to do about traffic in there? Let's say you have the housing development there, right? You're going to put a stoplight up there along 83? Because we got trouble in the morning getting on the road the way it is sometimes. You know, you got rush traffic in the evening, in the morning. What are you going to do? Put a traffic light out there? If you got that development to the north, you're going to have double the traffic coming up there. What are we going to do? Do you guys have any answers for those questions, or?
Chairman and
Commissioner
I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is we're not talking about a development, we're not talking about a development agreement. What we're discussing tonight is a rezone of to an R2 or from ag to R2. Whether the development agreement, if or whenever that would come, that would have to come before, and they'd have to meet certain expectations of this board plus the county commission. And I understand that there's a lot of assumptions that this may get developed. We don't know for sure when, but we're just talking about a rezone from ag to R2, I do believe. Should we even be discussing as far as any kind of developments as of yet? Because it's not a development that's coming before us.
That's not the question at this point.
Right, it's not the question at the point. The only question that we have in front of us as of today is, do we rezone this from A, agricultural to R2? We don't have any development agreements. There's nothing that's been discussed about development. There was a past one, but there's nothing before us today that there's a development. And once that would possibly come to fruition, would be having to be discussed, and a lot of those questions that you're asking, Adrian, would have to be asked at that time with the developer's agreement, what that may or may not look like. That's the way I take it, and if I'm wrong, I would be open to being corrected, I guess. But as of right now, we're being asked to change it from A, agricultural, to an R2.
No, he still has to have his plat approved.
It still has.
And that plat may be entirely different than what the Stonegate plat was if a new owner presented that to us, if that land sold.
Someone can come in and do an R1. They can change, anytime, if it gets, we get these a lot within the city, and we get a lot of them where we're at now. But even though if it's changed from ag to R2, someone can come in and buy that and change that to an R1. They can leave it in R2. You know, there's different things that they can do with that if they so choose. But it's up to them to be able to. And then once that process, then it has to come before us. But once they decide that they want to do development on it, then there's another whole process that needs to be gone through. There's traffic studies that would have to be done possibly. You know, there's a lot of the questions that you're asking, Adrian, would have to be answered at that time as well. So I understand, and you know, from all the letters and requests that I've received, by all means, none of them have been on the positive side at all. But I think we need to, they're still going back to what the previous one was as far as Stonegate. We are started over. This is an A to an R2. It's not a PUD anymore because it was designed as a PUD to begin with. I think what we need to make sure that we keep in mind is that this is just a rezone request from A to an R2. There is no development. There's no development agreement. The landowner had come before us and said that there is none. I do believe, right, Brad? So that's basically where we're at right now, is he's asking for us to change from an A, agricultural, to an R2. And that's what we need to make sure we keep our focus on as far as if we want to proceed with that. And like I said, if I spoke out of line with the county, by all means.
So repeat the question, I didn't hear it.
What's the development standard that you guys set for
Still didn't quite understand what the question was. Those are minimum standards for R2 developments. That's a minimum, but that doesn't mean that they're approved that on this particular piece of property. That is just the minimum standards for an R2 development. Any R2 development plat has to come through this commission and get approved or denied. And at that time, we take into advice stormwater management, sewer, and all these other things that you mentioned, and very good points, traffic studies, etc., before any future plat might be approved or denied.
If this is changed to an R2, it is restricted to that. And these design developments would be part of that. But he would not be allowed as a property owner to build anything on this property until a plat is approved.
Exactly.
He couldn't even build a single-family home. Nothing. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Commissioner Whitaker.
One of the things I hung my hat on denying the Stonegate twice was density of the homes that were in that PUD. And they were too many homes on there for what we could handle road-wise and snow removal and the whole, we all know what it all went through, and the restrictions on sewage going into, the sewage treatment going into the Burnt Creek. But I carry a lot of those objections that I had on the first one over to this one, in that if it was going to R1, the lot size would be much bigger, and I would approve that, because R1 is what is around there. The residential areas around there are R1, and they're 2.5 acres, 1.5 to 2.5, and which is what is around there, which is compatible. If we go to R2, which if you look in the restrictions that are in there, then we're back down to the same density that we had when we had Stonegate, and I'm still opposed to that because there's just too many homes for the infrastructure and the roads, and we all went through that whole thing, like I said. So I'm opposed to going to R2. If it went to R1, it still could be residential, and Mr. Miller's concept of what his family thought and what they want to do with the property would still be available in R1. The lots would be bigger, and there would be septic systems on them rather than a communal sewage system. So I would rather approve that than this, because you're going to be right back to what we had with the PUD. Not exactly, but still a lot of homes on a small amount of land. So that's why I object to this change right here.
I agree with you. Now this here, if you got this development here, you're basically putting another city of Lincoln out here. Do we really want another city of Lincoln out here if you have this development like that? Half-acre lots. That's what you're doing.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner.
The other
Whitaker.
two developments, K&L Homes and the ranch, all their traffic immediately goes to Highway 83.
Yes.
And there's problems getting on the 83, which this development would too, but they're a half a mile or whatever it is from this development to 83. And so they don't immediately get into the better road of 83. They're still on a small, narrow, two-lane 26th or 110th, and both of them need to be improved. So that's one reason why we approved R2 for K&L and the ranch, because they empty right on 83, which is much more convenient and much more compatible with the land. It's right adjacent there.
Like you said, I don't have a problem with R1. But with this R2, I think that's too dense. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm Jim Miller. I'm the youngest child of the 9. I think it's kind of interesting that the gentleman before me knows what my dad's wishes was. I think that's kind of hard to tell, right? So the last years of our folks' lives, as we talked of everything and all of this, how would that gentleman know anything? What my father's wishes was? I have a question that maybe, first of all, I live in Wyoming. I was born and raised in Wing. I went to Wyoming. I made my career there. I've watched you guys' meetings. I have one question that maybe you guys could help me out. On this notification of how far out the neighbors are that you notify, in the bylaws, could one of you guys tell me how far that distance is?
Mr. Chairman, it's 1/4 mile.
It's 1/4 mile. Okay, thank you. As I've watched the other meetings on TV, because I live in Wyoming, there was people that was 10 miles away. Do we live in a country of protest? Could I just go to anybody's meeting and protest stuff if I'm not what the laws say? Like you guys stated earlier, we want to look at the facts, right? So what are the facts? I really don't think the gentleman before me knew what my parents' wishes was when they lived out there, because I communicated with them until their deaths. So when he goes, well, no, that's just going to be horse country, as my brother stated earlier, that was our parents' wishes to develop it someday. We're not here for plat approval. We're not here telling you what we want to do. We want to change it to R2 as a marketing ploy to sell our property. That's it. If you want to buy it, change it back to agricultural. We could care less. I think if you had it, you would want to market it for what your parents' wishes was. We're not here to get any approval, anything besides change it so we have a chance to market it for the value that our parents wished. That's all I have at this time. Anybody have anything for me?
Any questions for Gene?
Thanks.
Thank you, Gene. Any other comments?
My name is Forrest Eklund. My mother was the one that purchased this property. She swapped it out with a quarter of land with North American Coal. She married Mr. Miller and they lived together. They built a home on this property. When my mother passed away in '08, her husband had a life estate and continued on until he passed away, and then his children and my mother's children co-own that property. I have watched your meetings. I have listened to all of the rhetoric first of all, I was under the understanding that this thing was going to settle in February of 2019, which is a long, long time ago. I heard all of the different things that were put up to the past person that we had a purchase agreement with, and it seemed like everybody and his brother was raising and lowering and changing and everything, and it just got kind of ridiculous in the long run. In my life, I was with the military for 5 years. I was in law enforcement for 5 years, and I spent 30 years working for the city of Bismarck. And I've attended meetings beyond belief of how many meetings. And it has just blown my mind that all of the minutia and all of the ups and downs that go on to make a simple sale. My understanding was that we were coming here to ask for a zoning from agricultural to R2. Then people are showing up and they're talking about people driving down a road and talking about this and that and the other and all that. That's all material that should be taken and entered into when you have a purchaser and someone that is coming to you and says, I'm building this or that type of development according to the zoning. And so all I'm asking is for you people to decide whether this agricultural land, if it's against everything to dealing with Burleigh County, let's say you don't want to develop any land anymore in Burleigh County, so you're not going to have anything switching from agricultural to residential, well, that's your business. but all we're asking for is you to consider moving from agricultural to R2, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair,
Forrest. Any
sir,
questions?
Sir, can I ask a quick question? Would you object to going to R1 rather than R2?
Frankly, I don't know the minutia difference between R1 and R2. I was told that R2 was like, I think it was like an acre and a half. If it's different than that, I'm not aware of it. But there's an awful lot of properties that are being developed that I can see in that range. And if that is too small or too big, that's up for zoning to deal with. If that property is the last property that the Burleigh County Zoning Board is going to deal with at, let's say, an acre and a half, and you will no longer allow any developments of anything smaller than an acre and a half, then I believe that you should ask and have the things changed legally so that there can be no developments in this county of anything less than a certain amount. But I'm asking you to consider changing from agricultural to R2, and if you're opposed to it, then vote opposed to it. But there should be a reason why you vote opposed to it. Everybody would like to have 5 acres, 10 acres, 20, 40. I own 987 acres myself in another county. So I have the acreage to do what I want with. But here, you know, we're just asking for a simple thing. Either change the zoning from agricultural to R2 or turn it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Any other questions? Any other comments with regard to the public hearing on the zoning change?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jermaine Kruger, and I actually live in the development that borders 110th, but it's on the other side of Highway 83 from the area that we're talking about.
Could you state your name again? I didn't hear it.
Yes, Jermaine Kruger.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I had no intentions of speaking tonight. I've just been listening to some things over the time, but something that Commissioner Woodcox said actually resonated with me as I was hearing the initial presentation about this. And I guess to me R2 it's too small as far as the allowed lot size. I think about the number of houses that could potentially go into this area if it were zoned R2, and it could have some major impacts on our area, but mostly it could have some major impacts on our school district. And that area is currently like elementary schools, for example, that area goes to Sunrise. I know that there's another school that's in the works of being built to help with that overflow. But I really strongly encourage the commission and the zoning folks to consider and to have those conversations about what kind of impact that's going to have on our schools. If we have a house per half acre in this area, and it's the schools that are already being filled up by that area of land or that area of the school district, and we go that small of a lot size, we are just adding to the problem. And the school district is already working really hard to try to make up for what has already come in, and they're barely making ground. And so I think that it's really important for us to consider not adding more to that problem. So if it would be zoned R1, as Commissioner Woodcox has spoken about, that would alleviate a little bit of that addition to the problem. I live in the development across the way, and we've lived there for 16 years, and I thoroughly enjoy living in the country. I like not having people right on top of me. We have approximately 2 acres to our lot, and it's a great experience for myself, my family, and our neighbors around us. Living in the country is about living in the country, but living on a half-acre lot is not living in the country. And I think it's really important for you guys to think about the implications. I know that we're just looking at zoning, not development tonight, and that is important as well to consider just that piece. But I feel like this going to R2 right now is kind of putting the cart before the horse, in that if you zone it R2 now, it is going to be very difficult to go back to something less generous, like R1 later. So I would strongly encourage you guys to consider going R1 versus R2 with this development, just to alleviate some of the issues that we would be running into. Do you have any questions that I could answer?
Any questions for Jermaine? Thank you, Jermaine.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Trevor O'Shea, and I just want to follow up what this gal was talking about. I work in Bismarck Public Schools, and I would just like to add my insight that our elementary schools are, pretty stressed. We have a lot of kids, and the idea of another R2 development being thrown in, it will just throw potentially a lot more students at the school system. Will be more, there will be more stress on the school system, and that's not necessarily a good thing with regards to good quality education. So please take that into consideration. Any questions?
Thank you, Trevor. Questions for Trevor? Thank you, Trevor.
All right, cool.
Jeff?
Chairman Efforts and Commissioners, I'm Jeff Blease from Northwood Estates, just kitty corner to the Miller and Eklund property. Probably the current existing development that's going to be most impacted by this zoning. Certainly has the most number of residents in it that's going to receive all the implications of rezoning. You guys are the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, not the rubber stamping zoning commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's your job to plan far enough into the future to see what the needs are going to be. You're supposed to look at what the requests are and take into consideration how they're going to be impacted or how they will impact and affect the residents or the community members around them, as well as what the benefit to the community will be. When I look at this development, and I look at the development that has been approved north of us, that K&L Homes development, I'm totally against the K&L Homes development. That was done without any notification to us. Yeah, I guess if we read the papers or see what your minutes are going to be, we could have seen that. That's not my daily routine. I got plenty to do in a day. I got a job to take care of. Watching that is not going to be on my plate every day. The notice of only a quarter mile away, gosh, in that instance, what did that notify? 4 or 5 people? Landowners? You got one to the south, one to the southeast, then you go around the corners. It hardly notified very many people. They're concerned about people 10 miles away being able to speak. Everybody should be welcome to speak for or against a development or a change. And this change in zoning, though they say they don't know when it'll be developed or if it'll be developed, it opens the door to development. And as the Planning and Zoning Commission, you're charged with looking at that change and how that will create change down the road and what the impact will be. 3 big things that I see in this changing that impacts every one of us around there is going to be the traffic, the change to our quality of life or property values, and the potential of that open lagoon system like being asked for in the development by KNL Homes, as well as was asked for in this proposed development earlier. Going down to that half-acre size like an R2 will allow brings in that concern of the sewage. You can't do your own sewer system. R1, I believe you can. That's what we are in. Everybody has their own septic system. You don't smell anything. You don't have an open lagoon. You have no concern or devaluation to the property of the residents around you. If you don't think that's going to devaluate property, I would ask any one of you, would you allow the city to build a lagoon right next to you? Your neighbors to build a lagoon right next to your house? Or just up the road from yours? I think that would greatly change your living quality and your property right, or your property values. None of the existing landowners, I believe, are looking to come in and live next to a lagoon system like that, nor are they looking to live next to an R2 development. May not impact them and their sale of their land, only benefits them, a higher property value or a higher sale value, but everyone else around that still plans to live there or would like to live there is going to be impacted. The traffic, first of all, if you look by the numbers, if you would approve an R2 development out there, they would be able to put in a maximum number of around 260 homes. If that KNL home development north of that brings in 180 to 220 homes, and then if our Northwoods Estates would have approximately 40, and right across the road Prairie Crest has 40, you have a contiguous development that has a population based on 2.3 people per home that equals the size of Washburn or is a little bit larger. Larger than any of the other little towns around us, Center, New Salem, Steele. All of those communities have a police system dedicated just to that development or area, a fire department, school system, parks and recreational areas, controlled traffic. And right now we have none of that up there. If you look at the amount of traffic that will need to enter the roadway right near 110th onto Highway 83, and looking at the number of cars that would be there, in that contiguous development, you could easily have 400 to 600 homes. At 2 cars a home, that's 1,200 cars. If everybody would work in town, that's going to be easily a car needing to enter the roadway every 3 to 7 seconds to get to work from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning. And no traffic control on Highway 83. I got up one morning just a few summers ago to listen to the sound of an elderly lady that lost her life turning off 110th and trying to get onto Highway 83, who got hit right in the driver's door by a car coming up Highway 83. That crunch stays in my mind when I think of the traffic trying to enter Highway 83. That's before all of this traffic is going to be brought to that roadway. Look at 26th. It was presented that we could use 26th Street to go down. There isn't a shoulder on that roadway. The roadway is in poor shape. How do you put that much traffic on it? How do you still sustain agricultural traffic going up that roadway at the same time residential's trying to come down? 110th still has tractors, trucks, got me and pulling my trailers on that road. Stick us on that roadway and back traffic up behind us. Now how fast does a car need to enter the roadway?
And as soon as people get to feeling that they have to get to work, they're going to pull in front of people, and you will have crashes out on Highway 83. From November to March, when it's dark at 7 a.m., you can't tell if the car coming in the southbound lane is in the left or the right side or the outer or the inside lane. You have to sit and wait for a clearing. Add that complexity to the traffic problem that's coming. That's something that planning and zoning has to think about with the proposed change. Leaving it agricultural, you don't have to think about that. You've got that plan already in place. When you go to that lagoon system, I can't hardly say enough words about that. The odor that's going to come from that. It's promoted, oh, it will be odor free. There's not going to be an odor. I grew up on the farm. I don't care what kind of crap, what animal puts it out. It stinks, and it's going to have smell. It's going to be turned over at least once a year. That creates odor. It's going to be drained and needed to be hauled out. That creates odor. If it's going to be applied to the fields around our developments, that creates odor. So unless it's going to be an organized sewer system or an individual sewer system like our developments require of us, I'm totally opposed to the open lagoon system, and certainly opposed to the open lagoon system that's looked at for K&L Holmes' development. The loss in property values and quality of life, it's presented that this development's going to increase our property values. How? How does a lot more traffic, the loss in quality of life that we're enjoying out there right now, how does a bunch more sound of traffic increase property values? And then back to you guys as planning and zoning, how are you going to afford to buy all of the maintaining equipment for snow removal, for road maintenance? Has anybody contacted the sheriff's department to see if they need to hire, or if they feel they need to hire more personnel in order to police that area? My goodness, that number of people, I got to believe they would like to have some input on. Fire department, it was said the last time rural fire department was contacted. It's a pretty good trek to go up there, and as it was said before, you got a railroad track that you have to cross if the fire department comes up 26th. A lot of issues got to be put into the thought of the planning and zoning to change it to R2. We moved up there to get away from the city, to get away from the people. We want to continue to enjoy the lifestyle that we have up there. We're asking that you guys do not approve the R2 request. If it's simply that's what we want to do is put R2 on, if I came to you and was a current owner of that agricultural land and said, I want to put in a feedlot, I would hope you would look at how that impacts all the residents around there and would deny that. As is, the quarter next to it is still zoned agricultural. So if I would choose to purchase that, build a large farmstead, and house a lot of livestock around there, I guess it's already approved that I could do that. I would hope you would encourage me not to do that if that's what I was asking for. I just ask for you guys to vote no to the R2 rezoning. Thank you.
Any questions for Jeff?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Woodcock.
You referred to the quarter-mile distance of notifying landowners, adjacent landowners, and I've discussed today with our planning zoning director, Mitch Flanagan, who's sitting right there. We put it on it. We put on the agenda for next month to reconsider that quarter mile, going to a half mile or more. We don't know. That's why we're going to discuss it next month and maybe possibly changing that zoning ordinance. And Mitch already had done some research on what other counties in the state have done. Do you want to can you summarize that quickly?
We were, Mr. Chairman, we were looking at benchmarks for the rest of the state, and I had reviewed 26 or 27 counties. The furthest distance that any of them go is a half mile. The predominant disclosure on their zoning is that there's no distance required, that it's a recommendation from the Planning Commission how far you want to send those notifications. So it's the average is a quarter mile, the longest is a half mile, and I would say at least half of those 27 counties don't require any distance notification.
Thank you, Mitch. Any other questions for Jeff? Thank you, Jeff.
I'd like to respond to some of the comments that are made here. We're here
Yes,
for
Brian.
a zoning change only. My question is, when they developed Northwoods Estate, who was protesting any of that? There was a quarter mile. Nobody protested what they got. Under ag, I understand under ag, you can put a feedlot, you can put a concrete recycling plant, but now we have somebody up. We're here for a zoning change. He's talking about an open lagoon system, which I don't know what the lagoon system was in the past developer that was going to develop that, but that's irrelevant. We're talking about a zoning change, and under agricultural, he stands up here and says, I sure hope you wouldn't let somebody put a feedlot up out there. That's what the laws on the book say you can do. I'm saying I wouldn't want to do that to the neighbors. Maybe someone in return would want to do it if the tables were reversed. I can't talk for anyone else. I can talk for myself and my family. And all I'm saying, this comes up against some open lagoon system. I believe there's, like the staff has stated, and like you guys have all stated tonight, this is a R2 zoning request only. If and when someone buys this land, they can turn around and change right back to agricultural. They could put a feedlot up. They could put a concrete plant, asphalt plant, whatever. They have to come before you board members to get the approval to what they have to do on land. They can change it back to anything they want. I'm just saying we want R2 zoning because of the circumstances that have went on, and it's granted bordering us. And why aren't we granted the same as someone else? If they want to come tomorrow, talk to our realtor, and buy the land and do what they want, they're more than welcome to do it. It's on the market for sale, you know. And Adrian, I'm not going to get in arguments with me. I worked with him. He don't know what my dad's plans were. He's frustrated with my dad because his wife used to run the four-wheeler around on the property. My dad would run them off. B knows all about the tracks, and the four-wheeler tipped over out in our property this year. I have no trespassing signs up out there. I respect if someone else has a no trespassing sign. We were vandalized, and people go rip our fields all to heck with four-wheelers. I drove up on the property. There's pickups out there doing cookies out there. And I have another question as long as we're in front of the board. On the northeast corner of our property, that approach is on our land that is being used by people. And I have seriously thought about closing off that approach. When my dad and Forrest's mom, my stepmom, bought that property, they had it rezoned. Or not rezoned, they had it surveyed. The family that owned the land to the north that K&L Homes now has, my dad goes up and he says, just for your information, we own 15 feet of property across this rickety old fence line up there. And that approach on the northeast corner of this property is on our land. Mr. Mastel told my dad where he could go and get off my property, and I'm going to continue to farm this. And my dad said, no, understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to be civil with you. I'm just explaining so when you're dead and gone and I'm dead and gone, that our children understand that we own 15 feet on the other side of the rickety fence. I'm not going to tear it down and farm it with the land we're farming now. You can continue to farm it. So I'm asking you guys, do I have the right to fence that approach off? The stakes or the survey stakes are in the ditch. Our property goes to the ditch on 26th Street and to the north of that. I'm seriously thinking about fencing it off, and somebody can, whoever's farming that little chunk of land, if this is the way we're going to be treated as a family, then repercussions will come. You will find another way in to farm your chunk of land. You'll have the right to do that. I'm asking you as a commission tonight. To fence off my own property that approaches on our own property. To limit access to only our family or who we choose to go on there.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Carl Rocco. I think that a lot of the concerns here are with the memory of the previous meetings when the R2 would allow 200 homes or 300 homes and 149 acres, and all of the concerns that everyone is bringing up.
If that actually was a PUD, not an R2 request.
Okay. But the point is, whatever it was, to allow that type of density. Previously, in one of the other items on the agenda, you approved a zoning where they had individual septic systems. The ranch, which is an R2, but the owner made a choice to, I don't know the size of those lots, but there's over 100 acres of green area and 40 acres that probably could have been sold as lots. That's a septic system. It's easy once the slope goes to slide downhill, it's hard to go up. If this were an R1, that would alleviate, in my opinion, some of the concerns about the potential of an R2 having the density and bringing all of the other issues that were brought up with traffic and all of that, and with Burn Creek. The unnamed tributary, and I'll just make one statement because this is the zoning, but that unnamed tributary where all of these systems would run to is in the corner of my property. Mr. Johnson at the one meeting came in with a jug of water out of a treatment, said, don't drink this and don't touch it, but this meets the guidelines coming out of the system. And between the two systems, I think he said 1.9 million gallons would go into Burn Creek. If this were an R1 and we had individual septic systems, that wouldn't be an issue. If an R1 is granted and someone, at K&L, it's an R2, I mean, look at the lot prices. I mean, if you have bigger lots, I mean, there's 75 to 150,000. So instead of the potential of one where we get back to the old issue, which we all remember, 140, 150 houses and all of those issues, if we, from the developers, and number one, I feel sorry for the Miller family that when someone has a grievance that they can't come forward and bring it up here or talk to someone face to face, but to go and defame their property or put nails on there. I feel sorry for that happening. If you got a complaint, talk to someone face to face or come to the committee. So I would be in favor of being R1. And maybe I'm dumb, but that's less lots. You can charge more money. I mean, they are selling. When someone buys it and they want to change to an R2, which in my opinion allows all the issues we're talking about, then that could be brought up at that time, rather than having an R2 approved and then not knowing what the developer wants to do, whether he brings in, well, let's have 2-acre lots or whatever,
or brings in 200 houses on 140 acres. If an R1 were, we protected a lot of the concerns that were brought up, in my opinion. And then if they want to come and do an R2, then that brings up another, discussion. And I also have a feeling for the zoning and the planning commission of in K&L that, however that was done, that building is a job shack that's up there. I think that's a slap in the face for the committee that, I wish that's a great job shack. I mean, so, the rules are there for reasons on developments that streets and all of these things have to be in for the protection of the people that are buying the lots. So it just, I would like to see them go with an R1. It would have solved a lot of the concerns that are here, in my opinion, for density, and charge more money for the lots. You'd have bigger lots. And someone buys it, they can come in and try for an R2 and have all the other discussion. Thank you.
Any other questions for Carl? Thank you, Carl.
Good evening, Linda O'Shea. I strongly agree with the prior speakers against having an R2 for all the same
Pardon
reasons.
me, I didn't get your name.
Linda O'Shea.
Hi, Linda.
Hey. I strongly agree against the R2 for the same reasons that everyone else has talked to. I think, just like Mr. Raukow stated, an R1, that wouldn't be a problem at all. Going right away with an R2 on this opens up just huge issues that have been discussed in detail. An R1 would fit the area. One concern is that looking at the county and the planning and zoning and county commissioners, they have a huge challenge, in my opinion, is the unprecedented growth of the county. I am concerned, we bought that land. We're right across the street to the east of this development. We bought that 80 acres. We want to be out in the country. We want to have our livestock. We want our quality of life. We want peace and quiet. And one concern that driving around is urban development, urban sprawl. There's so many existing developments that need to be filled in. Having another high-density R2 development doesn't belong in this area, in my opinion, and it's just adding to urban sprawl. There's a lot of developments in the works that are in stages 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of places for people to live. If this was an R1, like Mr. Raukow said, you could have larger lots. It would fit in the area. And I believe that there's a lot of people that would like the same quality of life that we experience in that area with larger lots, more peace and quiet. Thank you.
Any questions for Linda? Thank you, Linda.
I'm Jim Miller again. I would just invite these people to buy our land. Change it back to agricultural, change it to R1. We have another developer right here. He said he has 40 homes. Buy our land. That's all I have to say to them. Our land is for sale. We have to sell it. There's 9 siblings. We're just trying to get something out of our land. No one's asking for any of these septic or open lagoons that I've heard. We're not here for that. I'm here to sell my land. If you owned the land, Would you sell it for $1 an acre, or would you sell it for $2,000 an acre? I'm asking you that question. It's simple. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for these open lagoons and traffic studies and school problems. I don't think anybody's asked for that. Would anyone like to buy my 1/9 of the land tonight, right now? It's for sale. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Lisa Appelt, and I probably have the biggest interest because I am right to the south, right across the road on 2101 110th Avenue Northeast. And I completely understand the concerns that Brad has brought up and his brother, because I too maybe one day would want to sell my land. But in essence of being fair to the existing people that live around in that area, I do not think that it is responsible for you to approve this R2 zoning. The points that have been brought up numerous times, I don't think that you guys can deny them. And everybody here tonight has asked for reconsideration of an R1 zoning, and it doesn't seem like they're willing to bring that forward to you. So I'm not quite sure why there's such a, if there's no plan, if they have no plan, I don't know why they would be so opposed to bringing an R1 zoning change to you. Anyway, I just asked all the points you have heard so many times already, so I'm not going to reiterate them. But I just ask that you be responsible for the existing landowners and the residents of Northwood Estates, and just make a responsible decision. I do not think the infrastructure is there currently, and if you have a plan for it, I guess in the future, we would love to see it because it would benefit us as well. So I just respectfully ask that you really consider this decision tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa.
My name is Bill Dutoit. I live in Northwood Estates. As I sit here and listen to all of this, it kind of comes down to money. The Millers want to change the zoning so they can get more money for their land than they can from agriculture, which is reasonable. A developer comes in and he makes his money off the lots, and then he's got his money in his pocket and he moves on. Who's stuck with the smell of a lagoon? Who's stuck with the traffic? Who's stuck with all of that? You guys as commissioners, whether it's city commissioners, county commissioners, and the surrounding public. We're the ones that would suffer for it after everybody took their cream off the top. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Thank you. Any?
Forrest Eklund again. I'm going to make this very brief. You've been talking about R2, R1. You know more about this by far than I do. But evidently, according to people in the audience, R2 is a horrible, horrible zoning thing? And if it is, why don't you guys see to it that it's changed and that there's never, ever again in Burleigh County any property sold that is zoned R2? Because obviously it's horrible. If it's not horrible, it's just another development like any other. And as far as I know, we're not talking about, there's nobody that I know of that's going to be building lagoons or doing this or that or the other. And as far as I know, all the roads out there aren't going to be closed off, so that only 110 is going to be the only way that you can get from anywheres out there to Bismarck. So as far as I know, those other roads are still open. Traffic can still go. As far as schools go and things like that, I think that this county is going to continue to grow and that schools are going to continue to be built. Law enforcement is going to continue to expand unless you have it like in different parts of the country that I hear of where they're going to do away with law enforcement, and then we can all have a militia out there and we can take care of it ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Any other comments for the public hearing?
I'm Julie Bryant, and I also live in Northwood Estates, and I was a neighbor of Alan Byes for quite a while. I've lived out there for 28 years, and I love living in a development. I'm not against developments, and I appreciate you all listening to this, and I hope I'm the last one for you. So I would not oppose a development, but I would certainly appreciate less of a development than R2. And I would ask you to consider voting no on the R2. And for all the reasons stated, for the potential of all the reasons stated, in the attachment 3 that we got in the letter that allows our, we got 11 points here that R2 can allow. What we're asking for is the consideration of, let's not go there. Let's not go that far, because the potential for sustainability and responsibility for land use, Burnt Creek use, property values, traffic and roads, schools, neighborhood enjoyment, that an R2, as it has been since I've lived out there, should be way further close to town. And I think we kind of covered that in one of the meetings. And that R1 would be valuable for a nice development that fits in with the area. I don't actually know what happened, because I have only just started following your committee meetings, that it used to just be 10 acres or more north of 110th. So all of a sudden we have all this commotion over R2 and R1, and it seems a little bit, like Bill said, to be about money and about profit. And I would ask you to consider no on R2, again, and yes to sustainability of land and water, neighborhoods, traffic, public services. And I have a feeling that maybe R1, like Carl said, might bring some peace to the Miller and Byes family, just as well as an R2 might, and maybe peace to all of us. We'd all like to just have some peace. So the potential for R2 is just way out of hand for most of us living there. R1 would be okay. There is a lot of land for sale, like my neighbor to the east said. There's a lot of options for people to move to the country. Let's keep a high density, non-sustainable situation out of the country, out of the outer reaches of the county, and pull it back closer to the city. And let's maybe move ahead on voting against R2 and maybe allowing the Miller family to go a little bit more with something, useful for everybody involved. I would also like to put a big word in for maybe a 2-mile notice for that, what do you call it? Notification system, maybe a 2-mile. That would have helped. We could have all been a little more involved with the Heritage Reserve than we are now. And I thank you for your time and interest and consideration. And I do hope that we can find a way to peacefully resolve for the family that's involved here, as well as the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions for Julie? Thank you. Anyone else like to testify with regard to the zoning change? Don't want to leave anybody out. Seeing none, I think we'll close the public hearing at this time. Been brought up in discussions about changing the zoning to R1, but as a board, we can't arbitrarily do that questioned by the landowners. So we have to vote on the request as presented to us. And the request that's presented to us is to change from agricultural to R2. Discussion?
Chairman, Commissioners.
Yes. Commissioner Marquardt.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I had mentioned earlier, and no disrespect to Adrian when I interrupted him as far as just, but I was trying to make sure that we had the discussion just about the or the RZ versus, or the to agriculture, and to make sure that we were on topic as far as that. And with all those other underlying issues, yes, that would go with that R2. You know, I'm torn as far as, you know, we have the property rights of the owner of the land that's in question, but we also have the rights of the citizens around to be able to, like Mr. Blees said, to plan. You know, that's what we're here and what we're chosen to do, and if it doesn't go the way of either one of them, it goes before the Board of County Commissioners. So, you know, we have the R2 to the north, right or wrong, you know, so there is some precedent there, but that doesn't say that we can't change or deny this request. I think in R1, and that's why I had asked the question previously, and that's why I asked the question again tonight, Commissioner Woodcox had also mentioned it as well, is that an R1 would seem to fit in this area a lot better than in R2. But like I said, you know, I'm still kind of torn because we did go north farther with that R2, like I said, right or wrong, but that was the decision that we made here. With all the comments, you know, that has come forward, it's unfortunate that, you know, the neighbors, I would hope, be a little bit more peaceful than what it has been, you know, to the Miller family as far as some of the destruction and issues that have taken place there. That's totally uncalled for, and I'm sorry that has happened. It shouldn't. Like one of the other gentlemen said, that needs to either come face to face and have that discussion, or during a meeting of some sort, so it's somewhat controlled to help move some of these issues forward. Like I said, I'm torn. I would rather see see an R1, I do believe, in that area, but like I said, there's precedent set as far as the R2, but we have that ability to either approve or deny, and if it's denied, then the Miller family can take it to the county commissioners, I do believe, to see and have more discussions. So that's where I'm at as of right now. I would look for more discussion or discussion.
Mr. Bakken.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't about a PUD. This isn't about something in the past. This is about a landowner who owns a piece of property, who wants to sell that property, and has made a decision that they think the best way that they can sell that property is by zoning this R2. They've stated not for their purpose of development. That would be a subsequent owner. That would be a subsequent different meeting. That would be a plat. That would be a different discussion. The discussion right now is, can the owner of that property zone the property that the way that they see fit for their best interest to sell that property? And for me, that's what this comes down to.
Further discussion?
Chairman, if there's no other discussion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff findings and rezone this piece of property to an R2.
Then move to approve the zoning change from A, agricultural, to R2, and recommend that to the Burleigh County Commission. Is there a second to that motion? Do I hear a second? Hearing none, the motion dies for lack of second. Is there further discussion with regard to the zoning change request? Commissioner Streifel.
I would just like to clarify that an R1 would allow for one family per net acre, which in that case, taking out the farmstead, would still allow for 145 homes. And I had heard some confusion on that earlier, so I just wanted to clarify that. I think the main problem that we're going to see is that even with, we're not opposed to development. We just need to be smart about it. And when we have roads that aren't going to support the type of development that an R2 would be, that's where we got to have responsibility.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can we ask our planning department, if we went to an R1, what's the lot size restrictions?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, the minimum lot area for a R1 is 65,000 square feet.
Did you say 65?
65,000.
That's an acre and a half, right?
Yep.
Roughly. That's the minimum size?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Commissioner.
If we, in part of our packet, which probably the audience didn't get it, I have the restrictions on the R2 development, and there are 11 that are, most of them are due with lot size and and building size, which really doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me, but number one is density. The maximum allowable density is two families per net acre. So you're talking considerably smaller lots, I mean, 2 per acre rather than 1 per 1.5 acre. And the last restriction is central sewer system. All lots should be served by a central sewer system approved by the North Dakota State Department of Health. So it has to have a central sewer system. It would not allow drain fields. Am I correct in that? Thank you.
That's correct. Mr. Patrick.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny the R2.
Been moved that we deny the request to change from A agricultural to R2. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Bittner.
Okay, just so that we're on the same page, do we want to talk about those individual things that are the findings of fact, or do we want to just go with what was presented to us? Because, you know, the information that was presented here, this is a public hearing, and the point with the public hearing is to find out what the public thinks, right? And I think it's pretty clear what the public thinks. I, for one, don't quite understand why. You know, I think everybody knows that I'm a property rights advocate, but I don't understand why the family feels that R2 is the best thing for that spot, because it's running into such public opposition. I mean, I'm not a very smart guy, but I would think that with that kind of opposition, I would reconsider that myself. So the findings of fact, I think, are pretty much the same here that they were on the Stonegate subdivision. We had the concern about roads and schools and unregulated, potentially unregulated effluent, you know, quality of life, I mean, all of those things. And so I just don't see how we could approve of this. In essence, I'm saying I support the motion to deny simply because the case has been made so eloquently by the public that it about overrides some of my concerns. Now, I do want to know how we would be able to monitor and address the effluent from a system like this, because my concern here was if we just do a R2 zoning, the only thing that's stopping anything from happening there would be a permit from the state health department for a central sewer system, and that's out of our hands. So an R2 could potentially just automatically become essentially they would meet the criteria in the law. I think somebody mentioned that would still come to us, but that's not my understanding of it at this point. And then I would also like to know what is the status of the permit for the system that's proposed for the Heritage Ridge, because my understanding is they don't have a permit yet either. So this is all seeming so premature to me. I apologize for running on, but I just don't see how we would move ahead and approve it, so I have to support the denial.
Chairman?
Yes.
Commissioner Bittner, system like what? We're not discussing a PUD, we're not discussing a development, we're just discussing a zoning change, not what could or could not happen with this property, strictly the zoning change.
Right. Mind if I respond to that?
Sure.
Sure, but if you look at the zoning ordinance, it tells you exactly what the criteria are for R2.
That's a different meeting.
Okay, so it has, essentially this is 2 pages, you know, page 110 and 111, if you care to read along. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it tells you what's allowed and what the density, what the lot area, the lot width, the lot depth, the lot coverage, the front yard, side yard, rear yard, height limits, parking, and central sewer system. So if you meet those criteria,
But that's
you
a
can
discussion
build.
That's a discussion for a different meeting. This is strictly about.
No, it
the
isn't,
zoning
because
change.
I think that if we zone it R2 and you meet those criteria, you build. You're talking about an R2 zoning on specific lot sizes. And so if we approved it, it's a done deal. If you meet these criteria. It's not a question of it having to, I don't know how we can make the leap that it's only if they come back to us.
So maybe I'm a little confused, because if we approve the R2 zoning, then we automatically approve the plat and the development.
Sure, it is a plat.
It still has to meet county standards.
Right here in the minutes, it's plat.
This isn't a plat. This is just a zoning change.
Well, no.
Yes, Mitch?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to direct the commissioners to section 1 of the R2 zoning, where it's describing the continuation of single-family residential neighborhoods, and to discourage any use which could, because of its character or size, would create requirements and costs for public services such as police and fire protection, water supply, sewerage, before a service can be systematically and adequately provided. There are still requirements in the general description that if you feel that a plat comes to you to be for approval, you can still reference section 1 under general description. It's not an automatic approval for a plat to come to you just because it meets the design standards. It still has to meet that general description.
Sure, but it does under this. You know, it has a plat here. Right?
No, we don't have a plat. We have no plat in front of us for this subdivision yet. This is just a specific R2 zoning application.
But that's as a minimum, you see, because any one of these, you know, we have it, they're calling it Auditor's Lot A, Auditor's Lot B, Auditor's Lot C, and Auditor's Lot D. Right?
Those are basically the legal descriptions. They're not subdivision plats.
Well, you wouldn't have to have a subdivision plat to go ahead and build on this, though.
Yes.
No, not with those size of acres. They're over 40 acres, aren't they? One of them's 45, one of them's 49, another one's 49, another's 6.7.
Currently, if it's
zoned R2, you could go ahead and build.
If it's zoned R2, you'd have to come in for, there's no building permits issued to a plat of a regular description. There has to be a replat.
That's over 40 acres, though. They're individual, you know, there's one of them that's less than 7. The 3 of them are 49, 49, and 45. They could go ahead and build on that.
Not on a plat of a regular description unless he keeps the ag zoning.
I think it's enough of a gray area that we probably would need to clarify it. But
Right.
the simple point is that nobody outside of the family is in support of this. And as a county commissioner, I just have to go with the public on this.
Yeah, I'm just simply saying that you'll still have to reference section 1 in the R2. If there comes a preliminary plat to you for a discussion, it still needs to reference that section. Not that it meets the design criteria or design standards for size of lots and setbacks and et cetera. It still has to meet the character of size for that description of an R2 zoning.
Yeah, I'm having troubles hearing you, so I'll just agree with you.
Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to deny the zoning request from A agricultural to R2 single family residential. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Marla, will you take a roll vote, please?
The motion is to deny the zoning change from A agricultural to R2. A yes vote means you agree with the motion. A no vote means you don't. Commissioner Mund? Yes. Commissioner Patrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Streifel?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcox?
Yes.
Commissioner Agnew?
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken?
No.
Commissioner Bittner?
Yes.
Commissioner Markward?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
8-1 to deny.
Okay, is there any further business to come forward at this time? Oh, yes, Commissioner Patrick.
I just want to point out that in a couple of instances here in the zoning ordinance, like in the R2 and R3, it talks about North Dakota State Department of Health, and that should be changed to Department of Environmental Quality.
Oh,
in the rule.
The language?
Because it's no longer Health Department.
Department of Environmental Quality, we should make that clerical change in our zoning.
We should put that on the agenda, because I think changing the language is something that requires action of the Planning Commission and the County Commission.
Okay.
At least the action of the whole commission rather than just a consensus, you know. It's technicality, but we should have it on the agenda.
Do we need to bring it up?
Right. I mean, it makes sense.
Bring it up at the next meeting?
Yeah, as an agenda item. I mean, it makes sense to do that.
Anything else that we need to bring forward at this time?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Streifel.
I think the chairman said.
I understand. I just was wondering, I just wanted to ask if it could be brought up for discussion or how it's going to be handled, just so that we can get it on some sort of agenda and get it addressed.
The notification?
Right.
Yeah. I think, is it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Thank you.
Yes.
Right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So what we should have, what we should have there is a document change that we can consider, that we could schedule for a public hearing, because we'll have to have again, you'd have to have a public hearing to change the language in the ordinance. So we'd want staff to provide,
Provide the language.
Right, because we'll have to read it and then go to a public hearing and then.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other items of business that we need to bring forward at this time? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.